It all kicks off on a sunny day with a massive dragon soaring freely through the sky. Zooming in, we see the creature was actually a wyvern, majestically dominating the heavens. With a swift movement, the creature seemed to slice through the sky with a freedom like never before. And all that freedom was exactly why something terrible was about to happen to it. Just then, we're introduced to our main character, who's covered in battle scars. A member of the great magical house of Declan, he had decided to retire from the mercenary life. With a clenched fist, our hero shows that this was the sole reason for his difficult decision. The sky is now dark, and the mood feels a whole lot more tense. Suddenly, a mysterious crow appears, its eyes glowing in the darkness. Then our hero tells some goon that he's the last one left from his crew. Our hero is now face to face with a man who appears to be his adversary. The enemy says that number one had been hiding his skills this whole time. He then realizes this power doesn't belong to a simple mercenary, as our hero cracks a smile. The kid then says that now it's his turn to ask the questions as he pulls out an item. The item he grabbed is actually a magical tome that looks pretty powerful. The adversary confirms it is, just as a jolt of electric magic tightens around his neck. Our guy mocks him, asking if they really needed so many people to hunt down a single hound from House Declan. But the enemy asks how to use the book, and our hero replies that he actually has no idea. Our hero muses that if Declan knew how valuable the item was, they wouldn't have left it in some dusty basement. With that, he realizes that even without knowing how to use the book, they chased him to the ends of the earth for it. This means the item is super valuable, and the enemy demands he hand over the magical tome right now. The villain then offers a deal, saying he might let him go back to being a mercenary. However, our hero just flashes a mocking grin in response to the enemy's proposal. He then asks what kind of power a mercenary manager even has to make that happen as he preps a spell. The kid asks if he has any last words and then blasts him with magic, making him scream in agony. At that moment, a mysterious figure with a cane appears amidst a red aura. The main character goes on high alert, sensing a malevolent presence approaching fast. He can feel that the newcomer is extremely dangerous just from his gaze alone. The man praises the kid's instincts and comments on the vicious aura he's giving off. With a dark pleasure in his eyes, the man introduces himself as Faren von Declan, the head of the house. The man then reveals he's the head of the great magical house of Declan from the eastern continent. Faren then says he wants the tome, and that they can talk after our hero hands it over. House Declan is the strongest magical family, and its leader is the most powerful mage in history. Staring at that grim figure, our guy wonders what kind of person he could possibly be. With a confident smile, Faren already seems certain of his victory against our hero. The main character thinks what a pain this is, and the villain doesn't understand his reaction. With that, our hero calls him shameless for trying to snatch his hard-earned loot, but the head of House Declan just lets out a mocking laugh at the kid's attitude. The two then stare each other down in a tense atmosphere, preparing for a showdown. Our guy thinks that maybe he shouldn't have eaten that wyvern, because now the final boss has shown up. Even so, he admits that Faren's aura is no joke and that he's the strongest mage he's ever seen. The villain then says it would be easier to just beat him and take the tome, but he'd rather cut to the chase. Faren proposes that he return to House Declan and hand over the tome to be forgiven. He continues to praise the main character's talent, saying he doesn't understand how they missed it before. He even says he's just a mutt with garbage tier techniques, but possesses an incredible gift. The villain then asks how high the kid could fly with the backing of House Declan, and also how high the house itself could rise with our hero as its top blade. With that, he invites him to return to the house, but says he still needs to give back the magic book. To the villain's surprise, our hero seems to agree with the proposal and accepts the deal. The head of House Declan is pleased, but our guy cuts him off and says he has one condition. With a mocking smile, our hero says he'll only accept if Faren gives him the spot as head of the house. The villain's expression shifts as he understands the true intention behind our hero's proposal. Our guy then preps a spell and asks if the head of the house watched the entire fight. At that, the former enemy trapped in the spell starts screaming in pain from the electricity. Our hero then asks if Faren can count how many have already been taken down by him. The head of House Declan, now with a serious expression, seems to have lost his patience with the kid. Faren then says that's how it's going to be and warns that the main character might not leave here alive. Our hero gets a little tense, realizing the villain isn't wrong about the situation. Even so, the kid plants his feet firmly on the ground, preparing for the inevitable battle. With a shout, he agrees with the villain and powers up to start the fight. With that, our hero and the villain's powers collide in a massive explosion of magic. With a battle cry, the main character says there's only one way to find out who's stronger. The villain calmly replies that it seems he'll have to put the kid in his place. Then the head of House Declan begins to conjure a powerful spell with his hand. A huge structure of red magic erupts from the ground and surges towards the main character. Faren remains calm and confident, holding his cane and controlling his magic. Our hero is blown away by the enemy's power and calls him a crazy maniac. Despite giving it his all, our guy is pushed back by the force of the red magic. He then realizes what it means to be the head of the house, and that there's not a single opening in his defense. The villain takes advantage of our hero's distraction and attacks, saying he seems lost in thought. Faren then reminds him that some things you just know without having to measure them to be sure. Our guy struggles to defend himself from the attack as the red energy surrounds him. The villain finishes by saying that the power gap between them is one of those things. With that, a gigantic explosion occurs, completely engulfing our main character. After the dust settles, Faren says he only roughed him up a bit and asks if he's ready to talk. Through the smoke, our hero asks what would happen if he just bowed his head and came back now. With a suspicious look, the villain asks if the kid really thinks he'd fall for that. But the main character was already preparing his next attack with a massive surge of blue energy. With a maniacal grin, he yells that of course the head of the house wouldn't believe him. Then our guy unleashes his magic, screaming that he's sick and tired of being treated like a dog. With that, a powerful beam of electricity shoots toward the head of House Declan. Our hero shouts that a fancy collar doesn't change the fact that he'd still be a dog. The villain then plants his feet and, with contempt, calls the kid pathetic. But Faren effortlessly defends himself by creating a massive circle of red magic. The magic expands, creating a large energy barrier that nullifies our hero's attack. The head of House Declan then says he'll show him what real power looks like. With overwhelming power, Faren subjugates our hero, who calls him a monster. At that moment, our hero remembers something as the sky fills with purple lightning. He recalls that one day when he suddenly looked up at the sky for no reason at all, and the wyvern soaring through the heavens seemed so free that it awakened something inside him. And then our hero remembers that the reason he looked up at the sky was a feeling of agony. Back in the present, Faren praises the kid for holding on, as he thought he was a goner. The villain then asks if the main character has finally felt the massive difference in their power. With that, our hero admits that the head is insanely strong, and the villain invites him to talk. Our guy then asks if he wants him to go back to being a mercenary, but Faren says no. The proposal is actually for him to become the head of the Bongshan family, leaving the kid shocked. He understands that Declan is powerful enough to challenge the throne and wants his loyalty. Holding the tome, the main character realizes this was the villain's true objective all along. But Faren says he's underestimating his own value and that he wants both the kid and the book. Our hero then sits on the ground, thinking over the proposal as the head watches him. After a moment, our guy holds out the tome, and the villain praises him for making the right choice. With a smile, Faren says this settles his crimes and reaches for the book. But as he's about to grab the item, our hero engulfs it in a strange purple flame. The head of House Declan is completely bewildered and furiously asks what he's doing. Our guy then says that the villain told him he could hand over the book, even if it was just ashes. The villain becomes enraged and threatens him, but our hero tells him to shut up and listen. He says it was never about the money, since being a mercenary doesn't pay well, and he only kept the book because of its value. Our hero then asks if the head has ever heard of the mercenary who was devoured by the young master of House Declan. He reveals that the book contains forbidden magic and that the master devoured his comrades, with the house covering everything up. Faren then asks if this is about revenge, but our guy denies it, saying he knows a mercenary's life isn't worth much. With a determined look, he reveals that he doesn't really care about that, and his friends didn't either. He just wanted to make sure they could get everything they had ever dreamed of having one day. But to make their dreams a reality, they needed a lot of money, so he needed a plan. And that's why he decided to retire for good, and would never go back to being a hunting dog for House Declan. Faren then decides to consider those words as our hero's last before his end. At that, the head of House Declan just snaps his fingers, looking very confident in his victory. Suddenly, a blue flame erupts around our hero, and the villain explains that this is the flame that never goes out. He then tells the kid to burn and regret his choice with every fiber of his being. But our hero is unfazed and yells that he regrets nothing as he stares into the blue fire. He says he'd rather go back to the gray zone than be a hunting dog, and if that's not an option, then kicking the bucket is a good alternative. Instead of feeling pain, our hero starts laughing like a maniac amidst the blue flames. He yells that he hasn't felt this free in a long time, and that he's loving the sensation. He laments not making it out alive, but says that if he's reborn, he'll seek both revenge and freedom. However, a mysterious wind suddenly starts swirling around the main character. With that, our hero is left confused about what just happened. Even Faren is completely bewildered, wondering why everything suddenly stopped. Our hero looks around and realizes that everything around him is completely frozen in time. He then notices the magical tome floating in the air, glowing intensely. The book opens on its own, and our guy reaches out towards it as if hypnotized. Suddenly, a golden symbol appears on his chest, and he wonders what it is. The mysterious symbol glows brightly on his chest, emanating immense power. However, something strange happens. Our hero appears holding a bowl as a coin drops into it. With his body rejuvenated, he wonders what happened, since he was just burning to a crisp. Looking at himself, our hero realizes something is very wrong with the current situation. He then looks around and sees a city with ancient architecture, wondering where he is. Seeing his younger hands and the coins in the bowl, the place feels all too familiar to him. With a drop of sweat running down his face, he remembers where he is and what that place signifies. The main character recognizes the gray zone, the place where he used to beg before becoming a mercenary. Startled, he places a hand on his chest and realizes that he has somehow managed to go back in time. At that moment, the sky opens up to a sunny day, and our guy's vision becomes clearer. He observes the city's buildings, now under the daylight, trying to process everything. The boy approaches a puddle of bright green water and looks at his reflection. In the reflection, he sees his younger face and remembers a fire scar that he despises. Our hero then notices that the golden mark on his chest remained even after going back in time. Sitting on the grass, he's certain that the magical tome was responsible for this turn of events. He reflects that the book must be incredibly important since the head of House Declan came after it personally. With a confident smirk, our hero crosses his arms and thinks that this is actually a pretty good thing. He smells the strong stench of sewage and realizes that everything is too vivid to be just a dream. Then, the kid gets up and with his hand raised, he realizes he's not just alive again. With a confident smile, he clenches his fist and feels like he can succeed at anything. This leads him to reflect on what it truly means to succeed in his new life. Sitting on the grass, he remembers that in the past, he had a huge dream in his heart. He then remembers that this dream was shared with all of his old comrades. This memory takes him back to a conversation with a man named Aster, the reason for his retirement. In the memory, Aster says that they were born in the gray zone, and because of that, they had nothing. Our hero replies that not eating was the worst part, but his friend says it wasn't just hunger that led them there. His friend then asks what really dragged their lives down into the gutter, but his comrade insists on talking about why their lives ended up in the gutter. With a grim look from his companion, our hero finally agrees to talk about it. He then reveals that the bitterest part was not having access to any kind of education. He explains that if they had studied, they wouldn't be slaves to the nobles, and that's why he decided to retire. With a smile on his face, he reveals what his true wish for the future was. Back in the present, he remembers that his big dream was to build a library. He dreamed of a place where everyone could read books for free, regardless of their background. However, our hero didn't want to stop there and decides to take his plan a step further. The kid imagines an imposing tower with all kinds of books, no matter the location, and with a wicked grin, he plans to leave Declan's secret manual right at the entrance on the first floor. That way, the cover would have the family crest, and inside would be the secret techniques they value more than life itself. Our hero admits that just imagining the scene makes his mouth water with anticipation, but he realizes that the biggest problem now is how to get his hands on that manual. With a confident smile, he decides that's a problem for his future self to solve. A fist? No, a kick smashes right into the main character's face, catching him completely by surprise. He falls to the ground, and the attacker yells that he's been looking all over for him. At that, the aggressor kicks him again and asks if he was hiding. Lying on the ground, our hero wonders who the heck this guy beating him up is. But he's survived countless battles, and with a swift move, he manages to grab the attacker's foot. The attacker is shocked that he blocked the kick, and our hero says he was hit 7 times. With a threatening glare, he warns that in return, the other guy is going to get 70 hits. The attacker gets a panicked look on his face, not understanding the kid's sudden confidence. Then our hero prepares an uppercut to the goon's chin, but as he throws the punch, he ends up spraining his own wrist. The main character looks at his fist and realizes it's making a strange noise. Furious, the attacker punches back and yells at our hero for daring to fight back. He keeps hitting our hero, calling him crazy for even trying to stand up to him. Even while getting beaten, the main character thinks that the physical pain is nothing compared to the H in his heart. With a discreet move, he steps on a rock that was on the ground near him. The attacker loses his balance and ends up falling backward into the puddle of green water. Seeing his enemy distracted, our hero realizes this is his big chance to escape. Meanwhile, the guy gets up, spitting out the dirty water with a disgusted look on his face. Our hero starts running and the attacker yells for him not to flee, but our guy has a plan. With a determined look, he promises he'll remember that guy's face and that this is a tactical retreat. He then thinks that he'll wear these hits like medals, because he's a veteran mercenary. He considers himself a man who doesn't know the meaning of the word quit and who always moves forward. But sitting in an alley, the main character realizes that the situation now is pretty serious. He looks at his injured wrist and sees he sprained it throwing the punch because his body is weak. With a sigh, he decides to forget about the tower for now and focus on strengthening his body. Suddenly, a mysterious voice asks if the kid is hungry, catching him by surprise. He turns around and sees a boy with white hair and red eyes staring at him. Our hero asks if the boy knows him, but the other simply says no. With an annoyed look, our guy thinks he should have seen that coming. He notices the boy's expensive clothes and deduces that he's a disgraced noble. The boy introduces himself as Damien and even adds that his mother's name is Bianca. The main character gets irritated, wondering why he's hearing things he shouldn't be. To his surprise, Damien reveals that he doesn't actually have a mother, leaving our guy confused. Our hero then says he doesn't have a father either, so they should just go their separate ways. He thinks it's better not to get involved with a walking time bomb like that kid. But Damien surprises him by saying he's coming along, and our hero wonders if he should just deck him. Annoyed, our hero tells the boy to get lost and leave him alone once and for all. But Damien points to the injury and asks if it hurts, with his hand extended. With a smile, he says he'll heal the wound, and a green magic appears in his hand. The main character is shocked to see a magic circle healing his wrist. The boy then reveals that the skill he used is called Magic Touch. But with a frightened look, our hero realizes that was much more powerful than a simple touch. He recognizes the Light of Healing, a secret technique of the Blander family, which fell because of Declan. With that, our guy realizes he's now involved in something very dirty and dangerous. He then wonders why a Blander child is in the gray zone and calls out his name. The boy doesn't answer, just observes. Suddenly, he reveals his different colored eyes and asks if the main character called him. Our hero is terrified because he remembers something awful upon seeing that boy's eyes. The memory he has is of a member of the Blander bloodline who was born with different eyes. He was known as the Monster of Blandur, a butcher who wouldn't stay down even if you took him out. Then our hero remembers the full name of that terrifying figure, Faren von Declan. But instead of a scary figure, Damien is squatting down, smiling happily as he watches ants on the ground. At that, the boy starts counting the ants one by one, leaving the main character in disbelief. The main character then recalls a mission from the past, before his regression. Back then, one of his comrades was complaining about having to deal with the Blander's problems. Then he remembers a rumor that was going around about a monster that had already taken dozens of lives. Our hero then asks if the creature was an ogre or something similar. But upon arriving at the scene, our hero is completely shocked by what he finds, because in front of him wasn't an ogre, but a scene of utter destruction. In the midst of the flames, he saw a person brutally finishing off another, and with an insane smile, the so-called monster was using healing magic while fighting like a madman. He was known as the Mad Butcher, the monster that wouldn't die even when struck down, and so he recalls the name of that terrifying figure, Faren von Declan. However, the boy in front of him now just seems like a happy, harmless child. The main character is speechless as he watches the young monster cheerfully counting. He then questions how the only son of the Blander's head ended up in a place like this. Suddenly, the boy jumps up and yells about food, leaving the main character confused. With a smile, the boy says that to be healthy, you have to eat well, just like his mother taught him. The main character agrees with the boy and then asks if he has any money for them to eat. To his surprise, the boy reveals a pouch full of shiny gold coins. With a determined look, our hero puts a hand on the boy's shoulder and calls his name. Then, with a smile, he declares that from now on, the two of them are friends. Our guy insists on the friendship, saying that friends should always share what they have. With an excited smile, he hugs the boy and invites him to eat together. Under the setting sun, our hero asks what he and Damien are. Damien replies that now they're friends. After the meal, night finally arrives, and the sky is filled with stars. With a full stomach, our guy lets out a sigh of satisfaction after the meal. Sitting on the bed, he feels refreshed and content after eating and taking a shower. Just then, he sees the boy standing there and asks what he's doing, just watching him. The boy reveals that he has always slept on the streets and that this is the first time he's stayed in a place like this. With a smile, the main character pats the bed, seeming to have an idea. Then the boy says seriously that, just like our hero, he doesn't have a father either. But our hero corrects him, saying that he does have one, but the boy denies it, and a silly argument starts. Our hero then sarcastically asks if the boy doesn't have a mother either. The boy replies that she's not here, and our guy decides it's best to analyze the situation. So he asks how long the boy has been alone, and he replies that he's slept 10 times since he ran away. The main character gets worried, wondering if the boy is being pursued by someone. But the boy reveals with a mysterious look that he also takes many naps during the day. With a smile, he explains that he naps twice a day, so that makes a total of 10 naps. Our hero then calculates that it's been about 3 or 4 days, and the boy complains about the uncomfortable bed. Our hero is simply speechless at the completely bonkers logic of this kid. He looks at the pillow. He grabs the pillow and hugs it, thinking this start is different from what he expected. The main character then decides he'll become the boy's babysitter and forge a connection with the Blanders, because he believes this alliance will be very useful against the Declan family in the future. But he remembers that first, he needs to take care of the 57 grudges he's holding on to. Our guy tells the boy he's going to lie down and asks not to be disturbed at all. But the boy sits up and asks if he's going to practice his breathing, and our hero just agrees. Lying down, he reflects that in his past life, he only learned basic spells with clear limits. That's why he used to sneak into nobles' houses to steal their secret spells. Through this, our guy learned various techniques like body hardening and even alchemy. But just before he met his end, he found a power that was a true catastrophe. This memory fills him with determination to do things differently this time. With his eyes glowing, he decides that now he will learn the fundamental art of the Declan family. This is a root technique for all their spells and can adapt to any type of mana. With a smile, he remembers that he memorized everything for research and that now he can finally use it. Our hero then begins to practice the breathing technique and a red energy emerges from his chest. Suddenly, he feels an intense pain as if lava is flowing through his entire body. As he tries to concentrate, he notices something strange happening inside him. He then wonders why there are impurities in his mana circuits. Our guy recognizes a high-level spell used only on direct heirs of noble families. This magic forces the mana to burn away all the impurities from his body's circuits, and so his entire body is enveloped in a bright blue light in a mana bath. Our hero screams in pain as the intense blue energy completely purifies his body. Exhausted, he finally sits up in bed and wonders how much time has passed. Beside him, the white-haired boy sleeps soundly like an angel in the other bed. Looking at his hand, our guy realizes that his mana is purer than it was in his past life. Even with this advantage, a drop of sweat runs down his face as he thinks about his enemy. He knows that defeating Declan is a nearly impossible task, even if he were reborn 100 times. But with a clenched fist, our hero shows that he won't give up so easily this time. With a confident smile, he says his chances have improved, and he never gives up. The next morning, a beautiful sunny day illuminates the entire city with its light. The boy is super excited to see that his hair is now brown. Our hero thinks that with this disguise, he won't be caught by the Blander family anytime soon. With a hat on his head, the boy asks his new friend what the next step is. The main character faces him with a serious and determined look, thinking about what to do. A smile appears on our MC's face, revealing his plan. Our hero then comments that the two of them are going to cause a little chaos around the city. Meanwhile, the attacker from before stretches and says the weather is perfect for a nap, but suddenly, his face turns to one of shock as he sees something approaching him. He then sees the main character walking towards him with the boy by his side. The attacker yells at our guy and asks where he's been all this time. Without even answering, our hero lands a powerful punch right in the enemy's stomach. The attacker falls to the ground, completely knocked out by the unexpected blow. With a threatening glare, he says the other guy is going to get 123 hits. Suddenly, other men appear and ask what's going on. The main character then finds himself surrounded by a group of faces he knows all too well. With a wicked grin, he faces them all as Damien asks if this is some kind of game. Our hero shows it's no game and lands a punch on the first guy's face. Next, the main character attacks another aggressor with a blow right to the gut. With a wicked grin, our hero continues the beatdown, easily dropping another enemy. The boy's jaw drops as he watches his new friend take down the entire group by himself. The main character explains that the technique is to infuse mana into his fist and deliver a series of rapid strikes. Damien's eyes sparkle, thinking the display of strength is simply incredible. Our hero then tells the boy that these are the moments when you say how awesome something is, and the boy remains stunned by the scene, unable to believe what's happening. After the fight, Damien approaches one of the fallen men, looking a bit confused. Then he decides to use his healing magic to fix all of the enemy's injuries. The attacker thanks him for the help, but is suddenly yanked up by the collar of his shirt. With a terrifying glare, our hero asks the guy how many times he's been hit in total. After some time, all the enemies are defeated, and the main character looks exhausted. But the punishment isn't over, and he uses an energy baton to continue the forced training. Again, he asks how many hits the man took, but the poor guy can't even remember anymore. With an excited smile, the boy asks if it's his turn to join the game. Suddenly, the scene changes, and we see one of the attackers crying in fear, begging them to stop. But our hero ignores him, and the boy continues to heal him while singing a silly song. After a long time, night finally falls, and the moon illuminates the sky. The group of attackers is now lined up, thanking the two for today. With a smile, our hero feels proud, and the boy says he wants to play again. Our guy remains silent for a moment with a thoughtful look on his face. One of the attackers approaches with a nervous smile and asks if they can go home now. The man explains that this is his house, but our hero understands he's being kicked out. With a terrifying look, our guy says that's going to be difficult, and the man immediately panics. Then the main character watches the group leave and thinks that this isn't resentment. With a serious look, he reflects to himself on how difficult all of this really is. As Damien waves, our hero senses someone approaching them. Suddenly, a mysterious figure lands on the ground with a threatening red energy. Our hero analyzes the newcomer and notes that he's fast and stealthy, like a mercenary. With a worried look, our hero realizes the newcomer is probably a pursuer. But the boy doesn't seem to notice the danger and continues waving to the goons who are leaving. Our hero is concerned because, with his current mana, it would be very difficult to fight this opponent. But with a determined look, he remembers that he's faced worse situations than this before. Even without much mana, he prepares for the fight, concentrating all the energy he can muster. Then he gathers all his mana and compresses it into a small sphere of power for the attack. With a serious face, he focuses completely on the technique he's about to use. He then unleashes his attack with everything he's got, knowing this is his only chance to win. However, something unbelievable happens. The mysterious figure appears and kneels. Our hero is surprised, and upon seeing the mysterious figure kneeling, he cancels his attack. Suddenly, a butler kneels on the ground and emotionally shouts the young master's name. The boy then recognizes the man and calls him Alfredo with a look of utter shock. The butler then hugs the boy and says he was so worried, looking for him everywhere. But Damien pushes him away and says he's not going back to the family, no way, and that he'd rather drop dead. With this scene, the main character finally understands that the boy actually ran away from home. Damien's cheeks are puffed out as the butler apologizes for making a scene in front of the guests. Alfredo then picks up the boy and formally introduces himself as the butler of the Blander family. With a smile, he says that Damien seems to like our guy very much and invites him to come along. The main character is surprised by the sudden invitation to the Blander family home. He then becomes suspicious of the butler's intentions and tries to figure out what he really wants. But with a smile, he decides it doesn't matter since he was already planning to ally with them. Our guy remembers that their territory has the famous Xenian Academy with the best library. So our hero accepts the invitation, and Alfredo goes to get the carriage to take them to the mansion. The main character grabs his clothes and thinks that even if this is a detour, it's a good thing. With a smile, he gets dressed and says he'll take the opportunity to see if the family's food is any good. And so, under the starry sky, the three of them set off towards the enormous Blander mansion. After a while, the carriage finally arrives at the grand gates of the estate. The main character then steps out of the vehicle and steps foot on the mansion grounds for the first time. With a thoughtful look, he wonders if this is his first official visit to the place. And before him, he sees the imposing and luxurious mansion of the famous Blander family. Alfredo says it's getting late and that our hero can rest, calling a maid to assist him. The young woman named Lancy asks the young master Damien to follow her with a slightly strange look. With an embarrassed smile, Damien stammers the maid's name. Suddenly, a scream echoes through the mansion, and the boy says he's made a huge mistake. Meanwhile, the full moon continues to illuminate the sky and the imposing Blander mansion. Alfredo walks alone down a long, luxurious hallway with a serious expression on his face. He then stops in front of a large door and knocks lightly, waiting for a response. From inside, a male voice tells him to enter, and the butler slowly opens the door. Alfredo enters and reports to a woman that Damien was in the 7th black and white zone. In a luxurious office, the butler reports to the matron of the family with respect. Suddenly, an aura of red energy explodes from the woman, who seems very irritated. She is shocked to hear about the zone and creates a magic circle with her hand. With a furious look, the matron asks if her son is okay and if anything happened to him. The butler then tries to calm the woman down and asks her to listen to what he has to say. After a moment, the matron finally calms down and says she understands the situation. With a sigh, the matron calms down and says it's a relief to hear her son is well. The butler agrees and says it was fortunate for everyone involved in that situation. After all, no one would want to face the fury of the feared Blood Witch, as she was known. With a smile, she says she loses control when it comes to her son and thanks Alfredo. The butler replies that it was his duty, but that there is something unusual he needs to report. The woman becomes curious and asks her butler what this unusual thing might be. He then reveals that he's talking about the new friend the boy made, named Asta. The butler explains that the kid noticed his presence and prepared for a counter-attack. He remembers that when the two faced off, the kid already had a spell in hand. In our guy's hands was a powerful and concentrated mana bullet, ready for combat. The woman is impressed and says that's incredible talent for a child from that zone. The butler then looks at his lady with a serious gaze and says that's exactly why. With a determined look, he prepares to ask a very important favor of the matron. The next morning, outside the mansion, the butler approaches the main character. With a dramatic look, he then asks that our guy become the family's successor. With a look of astonishment, the main character can't believe what he just heard. With a smug smile, the butler believes that our guy won't refuse such a great honor. However, the main character refuses the offer on the spot, leaving the man completely speechless. Utterly confused, Alfredo asks our guy if he heard him correctly. Then, with a confident pose, our hero confirms that the man heard him just fine. The butler is completely incredulous at our hero's response and doesn't know what to say. Totally paralyzed, he tries to process the refusal he just heard from the young man. With an expression of boredom, our hero wonders if the butler understood his answer. Damien asks what he meant by that. He holds the boy and thanks him for the consideration, but reaffirms that he prefers things as they are. The butler then begins to understand the reason for the refusal with a slightly forced smile. He thinks that our hero is just a talented vagrant who thinks too highly of himself for being born with magic. The butler remembers he was once the same, born into a common family with no limits. With an air of superiority, the butler tells the boy that the world is a vast place. The main character then agrees with the man's statement. Alfredo continues, saying that our hero must feel capable of conquering the world right now. But our hero simply replies that he doesn't feel that way at all. At that moment, a vein pops on the butler's forehead as he tries to control his anger. He then compares our hero to a Kenyan goblin who doesn't know the dangers of the world. But our hero cuts him off, saying he sees himself more as a wyvern that rules the skies. The butler's patience finally runs out. Annoyed, the butler says the kid knows nothing and stomps his foot hard on the ground. With a green aura, he prepares to personally show him his power. He then says he's going to teach him just how vast and terrifying the world truly is. But suddenly, the scene shifts to another part of the luxurious Blander mansion. Alfredo guides the main character down a corridor and into an enormous hall. Inside, other younger butlers watch the two arrive in surprise. Soon after, several butlers line up and greet Alfredo with respect. The man then asks what our guy thinks, explaining that they are the talents of the house. With a serious look, our hero realizes that the Blander family is truly no joke. He feels their aura and notes that even though they're young, they are all very well trained. But with a smirk, the main character seems to have noticed something else about them. He then thinks that looking at their eyes, they're all just a bunch of goblins. Alfredo insists on the proposal, saying he could shine brighter than all of them. However, our hero turns and refuses again, saying he simply hates the light. Next, one of the extras raises his hand and asks to speak, addressing the butler. Suddenly, one of the butlers named Winster steps forward and asks if he has something to say. With a mocking smile, he says that if the kid were any good, he wouldn't have refused the offer. He then offers to give our hero a little lesson about the real world. Alfredo asks if he wants a duel, but the trainee says it's just a sample of magic. The head butler thinks for a moment and decides the idea isn't entirely bad. With a smile, he turns to the main character and proposes a simple duel with the young man. Our hero already understands the situation and knows how much of a nuisance he is to everyone. He imagines that they all see him as a simple lucky vagrant who appeared out of nowhere. So our hero asks if he can choose his opponent, and Alfredo allows him to try. Without hesitation, the main character points directly at the trainee who challenged him first. But he doesn't stop there and points to 4 more people. With a defiant look, he says he'll fight all 5 of them at once. The trainees are speechless, unable to believe what they just heard. With a wicked grin, our hero asks if they're scared. Alfredo is completely surprised, but he soon bursts into laughter and says that's the spirit of a successor. Alfredo warns him about insulting House Blander, but our hero just smiles and says he'll take responsibility. With that, the butler agrees but sets a condition that our hero wins within 1 minute. The main character immediately understands that this so-called responsibility is becoming the old man's successor. Even knowing the trap, he accepts, and they all go to the arena while an instructor worries. However, the butler says that our hero's stubbornness needs to be broken for him to grow. At this, the instructor panics, as his career could be over if he injures the guest. In the audience, Damien makes a shushing gesture to his instructor and a maid accompanying him. The man whispers that our hero is in danger and asks the boy to stop the fight, but the boy cracks a smile and says he's shocked too, looking very excited about the brawl. With this reaction, the instructor puts his hand to his face, not believing the young master's attitude. The maid then warns Damien that his lady will be angry if he gets involved, and the boy gets irritated. Alfredo then tells the instructor to start the match, and the man agrees, though against his will. With a sigh of defeat, the poor guy thinks that orders are orders and that he did his best. Beside him, the young woman with glasses just continues to watch the whole situation in silence. Then the instructor walks to the arena, asking the two not to get involved. With a mischievous smile, Damien replies that he understood the message perfectly. In the arena, the instructor explains the rules, saying the fight will be turn-based. The butler interrupts him on the spot and says he prefers an all-out brawl with no rules. The man then agrees, saying the duel only ends when one side surrenders. With a serious look, the main character faces his 5 opponents, preparing to fight. On the other side, the group of trainees observes him with contempt and a great deal of arrogance. Winster thinks he's going to crush the kid and expose his true, useless worth. As soon as the instructor gives the signal to start, the battle finally begins. But in the blink of an eye, Winster is hit by a powerful mana attack. He is completely shocked and has no idea what just happened. The other trainees are also hit by the explosion and scream in pain in the process. In just one blow, all 5 opponents are completely defeated in the arena. The main character then approaches Winster, who is trembling in fear on the ground. With a wicked grin, our guy says he's going to give him the experience he wanted. The trainee recognizes the technique as a magic bullet but finds it useless in combat. Next, our hero continues his lesson, telling him never to judge people so easily. Then he unleashes a powerful wave of energy that hits all the enemies at once. With that, the trainees are sent flying while screaming in pain from the impact. The main character then announces his 3rd lesson. With a terrifying smile, he says that the world is vast and bitter, right to the enemy's face. Then our hero lands a punch of pure energy right in the middle of the guy's face. With a sinister smile, he says he's going to inject all these experiences into them so they learn. Terrified, the trainee yells that this isn't magic and calls him a lunatic. But the main character simply replies that it is magic as he kicks him hard. In a final blow, he hits him with a kick, revealing his technique, physical magic. The match instructor has a look of total panic, unable to believe the opponent's strength. All the other butlers in training watch the scene with the same terror etched on their faces. Meanwhile, our hero continues the lesson on one of the fallen guys under Alfredo's watchful eye. The head butler analyzes the power and notes it was a magic bullet compressed 4 or 5 times. At this, he remembers the first blow and thinks that if it had hit him squarely, it would have been his end. Impressed, the man recognizes the young man's innate mana control, and Damien is also stunned. With a dark aura, the main character seems to be enjoying himself while teaching the trainees a lesson. Damien applauds excitedly with a big smile, being his friend's #1 fan. But suddenly, someone shouts Alfredo's name. The butler turns around, completely shocked and surprised. He sees Lady Gamo arriving, accompanied by her maid. The instructor also notices the presence of the 2 women, who who are observing the mess in the arena. The woman with glasses stares at him, and he realizes the trainees think she's come to save them. The noblewoman then asks what happened, and Alfredo tries to explain it was just a simple test. With a furious look, the woman questions if all that was really just a test. The noblewoman stares at the scene of destruction and questions Alfredo about the so-called test he mentioned. She then notices Damien concentrating his magic and calls out to him, sending shivers down the boy's spine. Next, the woman orders Alfredo to remove all the injured trainees from the arena immediately. The head butler bows in respect and agrees to the order he just received. With a serious look, she tells Damien to go back to his room, but the boy seems quite disgruntled. The woman also asks our hero to leave and return to his quarters for now. Then she turns to the instructor and calls him by name, making the poor man very nervous. Without mincing words, the noblewoman says he's fired, and the poor guy is in shock, not knowing what to say. Later, in one of the mansion's halls, Lady Gamma calls for Alfredo, who attends to her promptly. She says she understands his intentions, but that this time, the man went too far with the test. The butler apologizes and accepts the punishment, but the woman seems to have other plans in mind. Sipping her tea, she asks about the fight and if Damien had to help his friend at any point. Alfredo replies that he didn't, and that the kid needed no help at all to win the duel. With a smile, he remembers the beatdown and says our guy was incredibly good at hitting people. He composes himself and says that the magic bullet he mentioned earlier was used by our hero in today's fight. The butler explains that the magic bullet was compressed 4 or 5 times, greatly increasing its power. This shows that the kid has simply absurd and out of the ordinary mana control. The woman then comments that it was quite a spectacle and that the boy has excellent mana control. Alfredo continues, explaining that he defeated 5 trainees by himself with just 1 magic bullet. At this, Lady Gamma asks about the successor proposal, and Alfredo says he rejected it. With a thoughtful expression, the noblewoman understands the situation and processes the information. She then says she needs to re-evaluate the kid and orders the butler to bring him to her. Shortly after, the main character is brought to the room where the woman awaits him with Damien. With a smile, she invites him to sit down while Damien eats cookies beside her. Our hero then sits and says he heard she called him for a private conversation. The woman agrees, but before starting, she places a small box on the table. Our guy is surprised, and the noblewoman says she heard Alfredo promised him a gift. With a serious look, the main character remembers the conditions set by the butler before the fight. In his mind, he recalls Alfredo saying he would give him a gift if he won in under a minute. Our hero didn't expect the gift to come so quickly, and the woman then tells him to open the box. With a bit of hesitation, the main character takes the box and opens it slowly. As soon as he opens it, a very strong golden light blinds him, leaving him shocked. Inside, he sees a high-quality item that only the top 5 mages of the house receive. However, our hero is suspicious, as good intentions usually stop at a meal, and gifts hide something else. The noblewoman then notices our guy's suspicion and gives him a slight smile. She tells him to accept it without fear, as it's for helping Damien and also an apology. Our hero then asks if by consuming it, he will have to join House Blandor. With a calm smile, the woman simply replies no and watches him attentively. Still suspicious, the main character asks if it's some kind of poison, and she denies it again. Then he asks if there are any conditions, and the noblewoman says there are none, leading him to accept the gift. That being the case, our guy says thanks, and the woman says it was nothing while Damien attacks the cookies. The main character thinks it was a nice unexpected gain while the noblewoman observes him, but the woman says she has something to propose, and our hero thinks he saw that coming. The noblewoman then calls his name while patting her son's head, who looks surprised. She says she'll arrange a spot at the academy and asks if he'd like to go with Damien. Our hero is surprised by the proposal to go to the academy, and the woman explains the situation. However, she continues, saying her son refused to go, so his enrollment was postponed to this year. The noblewoman admits she didn't expect the boy to run away from home to avoid the academy. Then she says that Damien likes him, and the boy happily agrees, saying he'll go if his friend goes too. The main character thinks for a bit and finds that the whole situation makes sense from her perspective. He understands that the woman fears her son will run away again if he's forced to go to school. At this, our guy realizes it's not a bad opportunity and that the academy could yield good connections. But with a smirk, he feels that this proposal is like them putting a leash on him. So, our hero says he'll think about it, and the woman agrees, asking him to let her know when he decides. However, she says she's curious about something else that has nothing to do with the academy. With a smile, the noblewoman asks why he rejected the proposal to become Alfredo's successor. The main character then looks back at her with an expression that's a bit hard to read. With a slight smile on his face, he prepares to give a very unusual answer to the woman. He remembers the butler falling to the ground after being hit by his powerful mana attack. With a mischievous grin, he says that his knees are too precious to kneel for anyone. The noblewoman is completely speechless at the bold and unexpected response from our guy. Meanwhile, outside the room, Alfredo listens to the entire conversation with great attention. The head butler is furious at the kid's audacity and calls him a brat with contempt. Back in his room, our hero decides to use the gift he received from the noble lady of the house. He exhales slowly, feeling the power flow through his entire body. Our guy is impressed, as the item is top-notch and just 10% absorption has already increased his mana. On top of that, he feels his physique is changing and adapting to something new and powerful. With a smile, he notices there are no impurities in the energy, which makes it more effective than expected. After meditating, the main character starts thinking about the proposal to go to the academy with Damien. He knows that at the academy, it would be easier to find a sponsor and that there are many advantages to it. With a clear mind, our hero decides to go for a walk and run a bit around the place. At that, our guy approaches a large door and opens it to leave his room. But as soon as he steps out, an unknown voice calls his name, putting him on alert. The young man turns around and sees a white-haired man leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Suddenly, our hero sizes up the stranger and realizes he must be a relative of Damien's. The main character then wonders why this family has to be so complicated all the time. Not paying him much mind, our guy simply ignores him, and the man is shocked by his reaction. The stranger is confused, looks at our hero's hair, and calls it dirty. The stranger says his annoying look suits him, and our hero is visibly irritated. At this, our guy touches his hair and thinks that the color can vary quite a bit depending on the lighting. With a strange smile, he wonders how anyone could find his eyes so annoying. The noble is completely shocked by our hero's bizarre and unexpected expression. With a forced smile, the man says his eyes look gentle and apologizes, trying to leave. Suddenly, Alfredo appears and grabs our hero, saying he came to clear up last night's misunderstanding. Desperate, the butler kneels and says it was all just a huge misunderstanding. At this, Damien's relative watches the whole scene, shocked by the butler's desperate attitude. The noble then points at our guy and yells that he was right about his dead goblin eyes. Angrily, the man accuses our hero of lying and, on top of that, being a total fraud. The noble then approaches our hero with a threatening tone under Alfredo's watchful eye. However, Alfredo watches the boy with his sharp gaze. The noble seems quite irritated by the young man's lack of respect, but, noticing Alfredo's stare, becomes uneasy. The man says he'll leave him alone for now, but expects him at the mage's hall to settle the score. Alfredo then asks if something is wrong, but our hero just smiles and says it's nothing major. With a smirk, our hero thinks he wasn't in a good mood anyway, and the timing is perfect. Then the noble walks away, and our guy says with a smile that he'll see him later at the hall. The main character then turns and calls for the head butler, who responds with a satisfied look. Our guy then asks Alfredo if he could meet with the lady of the house right now. A short time later, our hero is led to the noblewoman's room, where she calmly awaits him. The woman is writing something at her desk and welcomes our guy, calling him by name. With a smile, she asks the reason for the meeting so early and if he's already decided on the proposal. The woman looks at him seriously, and our guy simply confirms her suspicion. With a confident smile, the main character says he will enroll in the academy. The noblewoman is surprised by our hero's quick and direct answer. The noblewoman seems thoughtful yet pleased about the decision he made, while the main character thanks her for the invitation. As the main character leaves the room, Alfredo, hidden behind the door, spies on the entire conversation. He enters, and the head butler is shocked to hear that the young man accepted the proposal to go to the academy. Alfredo says he overheard that the boy accepted the proposal. The head butler gets super excited and yells that he knew about the passion and the fire in the boy's eyes. The noblewoman stares at the man with an expression of complete boredom and disinterest. The butler then questions about the next semester, since the first one is already fully covered. He imagines our hero desperate and anxious about not being able to pay the academy's tuition. And in that moment of pure distress, a saving hand will extend to the poor boy. This help will come in the form of Alfredo himself, offering his sponsorship like a golden angel. The woman scolds him for being too loud, and he apologizes, saying he's heading to the kitchen. With a tired look, the noblewoman watches the head butler leave her office. She thinks she understands his happiness, as he finally got a chance with the boy. However, the woman knows that for him, the academy is like a slow, acting poison. She continues to reflect on Alfredo's plan as she looks at the office door. The noblewoman deduces that he's so confident because he was tricked in the same way in the past. With a sigh, she shakes her head and thinks about her poor head butler. Meanwhile, the main character descends the mansion staircase, completely oblivious to everything. As he walks, our hero enjoys the sunny day to clear his mind a bit. He finally arrives in front of a huge building and recognizes the Mage's Hall, that idiot's place. With a firm step, the young man enters the place, which is very dark and strangely silent. Suddenly, a hooded figure appears, holding a candle, and questions what brings him there. Our hero feels awkward as he realizes he forgot to ask the name of the guy who called him. But the mysterious man recognizes him and, with a smile, says he was already waiting for him. Then the man guides him through the dark corridors of the hall with only the light of a candle. He points to a large door and tells our guy to enter without any ceremony. However, the man warns him to watch his head, leaving the main character confused. Even though he's suspicious, the young man slowly opens the door to see what awaits him on the other side. At that moment, several magical papers fly in his direction, and he understands the earlier warning. Our hero coughs as a voice calls his name and greets him. An imposing figure emerges from the shadows, introducing himself with a very mysterious smile. He reveals himself as Wenji von Blander and asks if our guy came to visit his younger brother. Shocked, the main character wonders if that white-haired punk called this man his brother. Our hero reflects on his past experiences infiltrating various magic academies. He observes and thinks that all mages have one characteristic in common. Then he remembers that mages who study magic always have one very specific thing in common. These guys are so obsessed with studying that they end up looking completely worn out in front of their books. At this, the first characteristic he noticed was their messy hair from pulling it so much. The main character then decides to break down the process of hair loss into stages. First, they try to deny the problem and wear a hood to hide their approaching baldness. In the second stage, the mage simply gives up on hiding it and reveals his thinning hair to everyone. After that, in the third stage, the person fully accepts their fate and shaves their entire head. And in the final stage, they use their power to research a magic that makes hair grow back. But Wenji is different and starts the conversation by apologizing for his younger brother's attitude. He says that the young master's guest would never make such a rude mistake with someone like him. The noble is impressed with our guy and even comments that he's very young to be so calm. Then our hero asks if he works at a magic academy, and Wenji says he's the vice-rector. Our guy is surprised and thinks that to be a vice-rector at such a young age, he must be very skilled. With a smirk, the noble thinks that the young master is quite unusual for his age. He finds him different from other children of noble families, who are usually quite rebellious. Our hero chuckles and thinks it would be easier if he just had a strange, fake smile. But the vice-rector has a gentle smile, and thinks the two have great compatibility. Then Wenji congratulates our guy for being encouraged to enroll at Zinnian Academy. The noble reveals that he also graduated from there and belongs to the class of 145. Seeing the young man's face, the vice-rector apologizes and says they can get straight to the point. But before they begin, the vice-rector says he wants to confirm something very important. At this, Wenji looks at him seriously and asks if he would risk his life for a friend. Our guy is totally confused by the sudden question and stares at the man, not understanding. The vice-rector picks up a glowing book and says that it affects the reputation of the Blander family. He then offers the book to the boy and says he'll give it to him if he risks his life for a friend. The noble reveals that it is the family's secret, a treatise on the light of healing. We see Damien's mother, the woman, tending to some flowers in a beautiful garden. With a very serious expression, she seems to be very focused on her work with the plants. With delicate shears, the woman carefully trims the yellow flowers in her garden. She then lets out a long sigh of relief as she looks up at the sunny morning sky. The noblewoman thinks that Damien going to the academy has taken a great weight off her shoulders. At that moment, she remembers our hero and how he has been a great friend to her son. The woman knows that our guy's talent is great and that he has a good nature, despite everything. But what she liked most about him was something very specific about his attitude and personality. Even after finding out about Damien's family, he didn't change his attitude one bit. That's why she thinks it's worth having him around, But this also brings a new problem. The young man is like a free bird and doesn't belong anywhere, which makes him unpredictable. The noblewoman then starts thinking of a way to keep our guy around forever. Back in the present, our hero continues to stare at the noble, completely confused by the proposal. Our guy then questions if Wenji is really offering the secret treatise of the Blander family. With a suspicious look, the young man wonders if this is all just a big trap. The vice rector observes the boy's eyes and notes that they are transparent and very bright. With a mysterious smile, he thinks that's why he can't read his intentions. Wenji thinks that, like a perfect assassin, our guy's eyes don't reflect any emotion. It's as if the boy wears a mask so perfect that not even he knows who he truly is. The vice rector says the matter is serious, but our hero interrupts him and says he'll answer. The young man crosses his legs and says they're in the same boat, so they can get straight to the point. With a smile, he says that if it's something he can do, he'll do it without a second thought. At this, the noble's expression changes, and he warns that if our guy refuses, he will have to eliminate him. Our hero then responds with a crazy look and tells the man to just finish him off. With a look of boredom, he thinks that for him, this would be the second time anyway. Suddenly, a dark energy starts emanating from the vice rector's body in the dark room. The noble unleashes a powerful purple aura that fills the entire room with his great magic. At that moment, the tea in our hero's cup starts to bubble and overflow strangely. Wenji then stares at the young man with a serious and challenging look, waiting for a reaction. But the main character remains with his arms crossed, unfazed by the display of power. With a satisfied smile, the noble seems to have really liked the boy's fearless attitude. He then says he can't take it anymore and reveals that the young master has passed his test. The noble says he needed someone he could trust who wasn't from his family. With a look of boredom, our hero thinks the test was like a sucker punch out of nowhere. The vice rector confesses that he didn't have high expectations and that rebellious kids are all the same. He questions why a family with such a reputation would place a rebel next to Damien. The vice rector asks about a fight and suggests our hero choose between speaking formally or informally, and the young man agrees to the idea. With a smile, the noble says a perfect pretext arose and that the fight between the two was the ideal excuse. The main character then questions the word probability and thinks about the real reason the vice rector would use a fight to get involved. The vice rector then wonders why he would use his brother as an excuse. The man explains it was hard for him to make the first move since there's no power struggle. He falls silent. With a dark look, the noble reveals that he is under the surveillance of the Devlin family. The main character is confused by the name Devlin and questions the reason for the surveillance. The noble says he'll be frank and reveals he's researching the celestial origin magic of the Devlins. Our guy is shocked to hear the revelation, and the noble continues to explain the situation. But before he can continue, our hero raises his hand and abruptly interrupts him mid-sentence. Our guy questions how someone who was supposed to be gone is still around, and if the noble wants to destroy this magic. With a smile, the noble confirms our guy's suspicion about the Devlin family. He reveals that at first, his plan was just to research a way to destroy the magic. The noble explains that this celestial magic is the root of all the secret arts of the Devlin family. With an insane smile, he says he found a way to improve a perfect art, and now he can't stop. The main character realizes that this man isn't just crazy, but completely insane. He admits to our protagonist that he couldn't control himself. The protagonist thinks the moment perfectly mirrors his past life when the Declan family wiped out the Blanders. That was why Faren risked his own house's survival to attack the Blanders. Our protagonist realizes that from the very beginning, the villain saw the potential in the new Thousand Circle, and the reason that man was so strong was because of his insane power. He recalls the immense magic the head of House Declan used against him. The guy calls out to our protagonist and asks if he's available. Our guy just sighs and asks why he came to talk to him. The man reveals he hasn't told his family about the Thousand Circle research. Our boy says the secretary would be the most likely suspect, but the guy dismisses that possibility and takes a sip of tea, explaining the problem is more related to the acquisition route. He chuckles, saying that the moment he realized he was discovered, he leaked part of the security formula. Our hero asks why he doesn't just join the Declans, since they would welcome him with open arms. The man says he has his personal reasons and asks the protagonist to do a secret job for him. The man explains that the research is a joint effort, and he can't make any progress with just the part he currently has. He hands the papers to our hero and assures him he'll be rewarded handsomely, and asks the protagonist to deliver the thesis to Professor Parn at Xenian Academy. Our guy crosses his arms, and the man offers the healing light spell. With a grin, our boy realizes this is a huge opportunity, so he decides to do things his way and turns to make a counteroffer. Our hero says he'll accept the spell as compensation, and also the new 1,000 circle. The man calls him shameless, but our guy says it's a yes or no deal. The man then agrees to the new circle, saying it doesn't matter, but he also sets a condition of his own. He explains that he'll need our hero's help until the thesis is completed. With a smile, our protagonist says it won't be hard to help out if it's about the thesis. Our boy then takes the document. After taking the document, he reveals he can't read, leaving the man outraged. But our hero says it was just a joke, then asks if Professor Perrin is someone trustworthy. The man laughs and says that from their academy days, until becoming an assistant professor, they were always competing. Our hero feels a bit uneasy, wondering if the man meant he was better than the professor, and that there's another nut job like Henzi at the academy. Later, back at the mansion, the full moon lights up the night sky. Our boy empties out his magic bag. He wonders why Henzi packed so much useless stuff, but among the books, a letter sealed with red wax catches his eye. Carefully, he opens the envelope. Our protagonist begins to read the letter. Inside the letter, Henzi explains that he has selected essential magic texts for him to master. Our hero is surprised by the contents of the letter. With the books and the letter in hand, he admits he received one heck of a gift. He realizes the study path has been laid out step by step, from basic to advanced. With a smile, our guy says this is good. He then grabs a pen and paper and starts to write. He calculates there are about 132 volumes and decides to discuss the Healing Light Grimoire with Damien. With a smile, he thinks of Damien and figures he can call this one of the perks of being friends. Our guy realizes the 132 volumes provided by Henzi are more than just books. With the letter, he understands he now has a category of his own for his future library. Our protagonist changes his plans and decides this will be the identity of his tower. He envisions the tower as a place that offers learning to all who seek it. Looking at the moon, he thinks it was an unexpected windfall. Meanwhile, Henzi watches the moon and reflects on his intentions with the protagonist. With a smile, he admits that our hero is becoming an interesting person. Henzi then cracks a sly smile. He remembers our guy's words, who told him to just end him because you only live once. Henzi is shocked, wondering if our boy really wanted him to do it, and starts roaring with laughter. He remembers that our hero's eyes weren't just words. He treated the end like it was nothing. The man understands that our hero is different and genuinely interesting. With a smile, Henzi thinks he's found someone who might be on his level. He wonders if it's possible our hero really can't read, but he quickly dismisses that absurd idea. The next day, the sun shines over the Blander mansion. Our protagonist gets ready, adjusting his uniform. With his bags packed, he's about to leave. The maid informs him that it's almost time, and tells him that upon arriving at the academy, he'll go through a simple registration. She explains that both he and Damien are exempt from the entrance exam. With a smile, the maid looks at him, and says he looks like a real student now, and that the uniform suits him well. Our hero thanks her. Our boy thinks that being exempt is a privilege of prestigious families. Suddenly, Damien excitedly shouts for the protagonist. Damien calls for the protagonist to hurry up. Lady Gamma tells her son to take care and calls out to our hero. With a smile, she says it's a great opportunity and hopes he achieves the results he desires. Our protagonist thanks her with a smile. He thinks, of course, he plans to achieve the results he wants and gets into the carriage. Our hero knows that Xenian Academy is the largest on the eastern continent, and with that, the carriage departs from the Blander mansion. With a determined look, our hero thinks that he's off to conquer his classmates. We see their carriage arriving in the city, where the academy is located. Damien shows his excitement for the big city. He places his hand on one of the books with anticipation. The protagonist reflects that the fundamentals of magic are simple, but the interpretations are quite different. He compares magic to water. For some people, magic can be like the water of life, but for others, it can be like a disastrous flood. Our guy concludes that it's all just a difference in perspective, and he knows that Henzi's curriculum focuses on Declan's celestial principle. Suddenly, Damien shouts for the protagonist, getting his attention. With a huge smile, he announces that they've finally arrived at the academy. The carriage then enters the gates of the Grand Xenian Academy. Our hero observes the structure from the window. The maid informs them that the carriage ride ends here, and everyone must walk during admission. She says goodbye and wishes them well in completing the ceremony. Damien says goodbye to the maid. He then grabs our protagonist's arm, telling him to hurry up. Our hero is confused by his excitement. Damien explains that the ceremony is in a theater with first come, first served seating. Our protagonist realizes this was an excuse the maid made up so Damien wouldn't be late. And since it's just an excuse, he'll let it slide this time. We see a hall with a very detailed ceiling. And in this hall, there are many students chatting among themselves. The hall is a huge amphitheater filled with seated students. Damien is impressed by the number of people and says the maid was right. Our guy just facepalms, not believing what his friend is saying. He then puts his hand in his pocket and pulls out a paper with the M-class seat numbers 11 and 12. Damien looks at the protagonist and asks if they can sit there. Our hero wonders why Damien is so excited, since he didn't want to come before. Suddenly, Damien trips and falls to the ground. He's shocked to see he's bumped into someone. The man Damien bumped into glares at the protagonist. His sour look makes it clear he didn't appreciate being bumped. Our protagonist helps Damien get up. Damien smiles and says he's not hurt, apologizing for not paying attention. The man then tells them to stop and asks what he got on his clothes. Our hero replies that it was spit. Damien then offers to clean it and starts rubbing the man's arm with more spit. The noble is furious with Damien's actions, and our hero realizes this is going to get ugly. Angrily, the man tries to throw a punch at Damien's face. But then our protagonist steps in, calling the man classmate. Holding his fist, the protagonist comments that he's making a mistake. He suggests that he stop right there. The man angrily asks who our hero is. With a smile, Damien interrupts, saying he's the protagonist's friend. The man says he'll regret the choice he's made. Our hero thinks that interacting with classmates on the first day is a bit much. He cracks his neck and asks if the man prefers to settle this with his fists. The commotion catches the attention of other students, who start whispering. The students comment that one is the big guy, the heir of the Dolompes, but they don't recognize the protagonist or his friend Damien. They start placing bets on who'll win. Suddenly, another student shouts at them. He tells them to stop watching and do something before the situation gets worse. Then, he tells the other students to make room for the fight to happen. Two students notice that one of the gray-haired boys is a mage. The mage students gather and create a barrier around the three of them. The crowd goes wild and starts betting on the fight again. From a distance, a student observes the situation with his arms crossed. The man in the background smirks at the fight. The man in front of the protagonist introduces himself as Exter, the second son of House Dolompe. With a purple aura surrounding him, he asks for our hero's name. Our protagonist says he doesn't have a noble bloodline and is just a passing nobody. Exter says it doesn't matter. He tells our protagonist to bring it on. Our guy cracks a smile and finds Exter amusing. With a mocking smile, he asks if Exter is scared. Exter becomes furious at the provocation. He stumps the ground hard, advancing and calling the protagonist a punk. He then attacks the protagonist first. The attack is so powerful it seems to break the sound barrier as it heads for the protagonist. But the protagonist reminds Exter that he's not alone. Then the protagonist dodges Exter's attack and sets up a counter-attack. The protagonist's powerful punch lands squarely on Exter's face. The punch has a strong impact, sending Exter flying backward. With the impact of the attack, he's left confused about what just happened. Exter is in shock and wonders how a punch can be so heavy. Exter looks at the protagonist with his blue aura, making him wonder if he's really a mage. Suddenly, Exter is confused to see a magic circle healing his mouth. In the corner is Damien, healing him. Smiling, Damien continues to heal Exter. Exter gets annoyed at being healed. Our protagonist takes advantage of his distraction and lands another punch through his guard. The structure of the barrier the students made begins to shake. Our guy launches a volley of energy punches at Exter. Our hero notes that he's pretty tough to withstand so many blows. Damien continues to heal Exter while enjoying the situation. The protagonist's punches fly at Exter while Damien heals him. Exter's legs start to tremble as he's unable to do anything. He then breaks into a cold sweat and wonders if he's scared. In the meantime, the students are cheering for Exter. They keep encouraging Exter, saying he's the pride of the Dolompes. Other students join the cheer, shouting that they believe in him. They all urge Exter to stop messing around and end the fight. With a smirk, Exter gets furious with the situation. He yells that he can't believe a mere mage is treating him this way. He then finally manages to fire a powerful blow at the protagonist. After easily dodging, the protagonist comments that he's not so bad. Angrily, Exter attacks again. He yells at our hero not to underestimate him. He then manages to land a hit on our guy, knocking him back. His friends celebrate the hit, saying it's what they expected from Exter. Exter realizes the blow landed clean, but he doesn't understand why it felt so weak. The protagonist flies through the air after being hit, but he naturally does an acrobatic flip and lands back on his feet. Our guy dusts off his clothes as if nothing happened. Exter stares at our hero, completely baffled. He then starts shouting in frustration. Furious, Exter charges toward our hero once more. Our protagonist observes the situation with disdain. He realizes he needs just one good hit to end the fight, but Damien keeps healing Exter. Damien is having a blast with the situation, healing Exter. Our hero then says he knows what to do to end the fight. With his hand crackling with lightning, he prepares to use a technique from his past life. He draws energy from the collision of particles. The technique uses magic but belongs neither to martial arts nor magic. It is a purely technical application of magical properties. The protagonist unleashes his powerful blow against Exter. The student's barrier begins to shake even more, scaring them. One of Exter's friends is confused. They look at the arena, trying to see what happened. Then, finally, the result is Exter falls to his knees. Soon after, he passes out and collapses. All the students are left speechless. They are in shock. But our hero raises his fist to the sky. Aura farming, our protagonist declares his victory. He then asks the crowd if they enjoyed it. The crowd goes wild and starts applauding our protagonist. Then Damien calls out to the protagonist. While celebrating, the protagonist gives him a pat on the head. The protagonist is also satisfied with the victory. From a distance, the previous student watches the protagonist again. With a smirk, he comments that a Magic Academy student shouldn't fight like that. He turns and tells his friend that it was quite vulgar. Suddenly, a man in a suit arrives, shouting for the students to move aside. He yells at the students, asking who started a fight on the first day. He threatens the students, but our guy realizes he's caused some trouble. He then thinks it's fine because he's a problem solver. With a smile, Damien takes the blame for the man. The protagonist is indignant that Damien is turning himself in. Meanwhile, Exter is still passed out on the ground. Inside a fancy room, the man in the suit calls Damien and our protagonist in for a talk. Our hero and Damien just agree. With that, the man asks if they've confessed honestly and says he won't give them any penalty. He then warns that he'll be keeping an eye on both of them from now on. Aster gets a bit tense with the warning, but nods his head. Outside the academy office, the two of them leave the room. They walk through the corridors and realize the entrance ceremony hasn't started yet. So they enter the hall, and the other students start whispering about Aster. People wonder how he defeated a martial artist when he's just a mage. Damien then waves to the crowd, and the protagonist realizes he's become a celebrity. Aster finally finds his seat. Damien gets excited again. Soon an old man begins his welcome speech. The academy's director starts talking about the teachings of the first master. Our protagonist is impressed by the director's stamina for giving such a long speech. Our protagonist looks to his side and sees Damien drooling in his sleep. With a slight smile, he finds it funny. Our guy then wipes Damien's drool with his own hand. Suddenly, a man calls out to the director. The director is then interrupted by one of his assistants, who whispers in his ear. The director then clears his throat to speak. He apologizes to the students and says something urgent has come up. He then ends his speech and leaves the stage. He is followed by a woman who steps onto the stage. The woman stands at the lectern. Then she yells for everyone to pay attention to her. All the sleeping students wake up startled. She then introduces herself as Jaira and says she will continue the ceremony. She calls the representative of the magic division to take the oath. The students are surprised to see a member of the Denai family at the academy. The students whisper that she is the third daughter of the Denai house, and that's why she is so skilled. Our protagonist watches Dahlia of Denai thoughtfully. Jaira explains that Denai is the second most renowned family of mages. The white-haired girl was the future representative mage of her family. The protagonist remembers that the two of them didn't get along, and with a smile, he thinks it's nice to see her again. Next, Jaira calls the representative of the martial arts division. A young man named Paul stands up. The students notice that Paul doesn't have a family name, so he must not be from a noble house. After the two representatives finish the oath, the ceremony concludes. Jaira then calls the teachers who will be teaching class 172 to introduce themselves. But before that happens, Denai notices our protagonist and stares at him. Our guy feels like she's looking directly at him. He wonders why she is staring at him so intently, but he ignores it, and an unfortunate thing happens. She trips on the stairs. She falls embarrassingly in front of everyone. Then the teachers are introduced to the students. One by one they introduce themselves, until one steps onto the stage and stomps his foot hard on the ground. He then introduces himself as Perun and says he will be teaching Magology. Our protagonist finds him more different than he expected. Still, he decides not to judge the professor so quickly. Jera then declares that the entrance ceremony is over. All students are instructed to follow the attendants to their dormitories. Our guy wakes up Damien, who had fallen asleep again. He then plays a prank on his friend, saying he's been expelled. Damien then quickly wakes up surprised, and he starts to panic, believing the protagonist. Then a little time passes. The protagonist walks through the dormitory. He finds it funny how Damien screamed over just a little joke. Arriving at his room, he wonders if this is the place. He opens the door and discovers his room is on the top floor, the most luxurious one. The protagonist is impressed with the room. He then finds a box with supplies. Our hero starts to organize his things. Just then, he hears the door opening and realizes he has a roommate. He then recognizes Paul, the representative of the martial arts division. The young man enters the room and tells the protagonist they should live in silence. With that, Paul picks up his bag and comments that he doesn't care what the protagonist does, and that they shouldn't meddle in each other's lives or even talk. Paul stares at our protagonist and asks if he has any questions. Aster just watches. Paul gets annoyed by the lack of response. Aster wonders what's so great about him. Suddenly, Aster makes a move in front of Paul. The swordsman gets startled and puts his hand on his sword to react. Aster then calms down and thinks his stance isn't so bad. He also notes that the way Paul holds his sword is good for a quick draw. Then Damien knocks on the protagonist's door, calling for him. Our guy smiles and says he's about to head out with his friend. Then the protagonist touches Paul's shoulder and comments that he'll be back soon. Our hero then warns that he won't bother him, and in return, he shouldn't complain if he sings late into the night. Outside, Damien waves to our guy. Damien excitedly asks who the protagonist's roommate is. He just comments that he doesn't know him. Aster then explains he was busy, so he doesn't know who his roommate is. Damien gets excited and invites the protagonist to explore the academy. Aster explains that the place is huge, so they need to get familiar with it to avoid getting lost. The academy is indeed very large and beautiful. Our guy agrees but feels like something is bothering him. He has a strange feeling, similar to one from his past life. On top of the academy buildings, there are blue flames. Aster realizes they are the academy's problem solvers. With a smile, he invites Damien to take a look at what's happening. The two then walk through the academy. Damien shows his excitement. They arrive at a place with an incredible view of the academy. Damien is amazed by the lake and says there's nothing like it where he lives. The two observe the beautiful scenery. Our protagonist finds taking care of Damien tiring but understands why Lancey left him with him. Our hero then tells Damien to ask someone to make a lake for him. That all it takes is digging and adding water. Damien gets excited about the idea and says he'll ask for a lake bigger and wider than the one at the academy. At the Blander mansion, Lancey feels a shiver after this idea planted by the protagonist in Damien's head. Then Damien asks what name he should give the lake. Aster then suggests the name Sweat and Tears, and Damien loves the idea. Lancey gets the shivers again. Damien gets excited again upon seeing a statue and suggests to the protagonist that they make one just like it. Our hero then suggests they make a dragon statue to make it cooler. Lancey starts to find these sudden chills strange. The two then decide to head back to the dormitory. Aster thinks he saw 7 problem solvers and estimates there are about 10 in total. He calculates that most of them are concentrated in the second magic hall. The protagonist then realizes their target might be Professor Perrin. He knows Declan has allies and they would naturally suspect Professor Perrin. Our hero notices a problem solver hiding in the bushes. With a smile, he thinks he appeared at the right moment. The cloaked figure watches intently. Our guy then decides he's going to find out how much they know. Night falls and the academy lights turn on. One of the problem solvers leaps across the academy. He moves quickly across the lampposts. The cloaked figure then enters a building. Inside, he finds another problem solver waiting for him. He asks where the others are, and the other replies that they went ahead. The cloaked figure informs him that headquarters has issued an emergency directive. He reveals that the main target is Professor Perrin, and they need to act tonight. The other cloaked figure thinks for a moment. The man explains that Henzi, the main target, has made a move. The other cloaked figure is then shocked to learn the plan has been moved up. He questions if they'll have to face the professors alone without the help of the unique numbers. The other cloaked figure informs him that none of the unique numbers will come to help them. However, he reveals an important piece of information. The fire demon Callahan will join them on the mission. The man is shocked to learn that someone as important as Callahan is coming. Callahan is the vice leader of Declan's Mage Corps and the Red Jewel. He is known for being cold and willing to use any means to complete a mission. The man realizes this mission is extremely risky. The other cloaked figure calms him down, saying there won't be an open conflict. He is relieved by the information, and the two prepare to leave. The two then exit the building to join the others. Aster watches the two of them moving away from the academy. He thinks the mission will happen at midnight tonight, and of all people, Callahan is involved. Aster remembers that when he was still active in his past life, Callahan was already at the peak of his power. The redhead was loyal to House Declan even after their defeat against the Blander family. He remained faithful to the ruined house, proving his immense devotion. Callahan kneels, demonstrating his loyalty to the family. He's dangerous now, but his true golden age came after the war against the Blanders. The redhead became known as Declan's Hell, who no one could stop, and marked his name in history. That's why the protagonist understands that he needs to capture Callahan as soon as possible at all costs. His magic is the art of Declan's flames, and since he is a renowned mage on the continent, the risk is worth it. Our guy wonders why one of the problem solvers retreated. Still, he has a doubt, since Henzi's thesis is with him, and they're saying the target will be delivered to Professor Perun, a secondary target. Our hero thinks that his thesis can't be a fake, nor can the target be something other than it. So that means the thesis to be delivered today is a fake copy. In the dormitory, Paul begins to put on a suit of gear. He then puts on the gauntlet of his suit. He equips his dagger and adjusts his gear. He also puts on a hood. Then, after looking like one of the problem solvers, he passes by the sleeping protagonist. He then stares at the protagonist in bed. However, what he didn't imagine was that the protagonist in bed was actually a mannequin. Meanwhile, in the clock tower, Professor Perrin is in his office. The night is calm, and the professor works peacefully. Professor Perrin seems to be focused. He pauses for a moment and thinks about the rats from the Declan family. Perrin gets annoyed and comments that he has tolerated them for too long, but now they have invaded his territory. Furious, the professor wonders what the Declan family is planning. The door to his office is opened. The cloaked man enters the professor's office. Professor Perrin wonders if he's a mercenary, but then Professor Perrin surprises the young man by calling him by his name. Professor Perrin advises Paul to refine his ether traces next time he disguises himself. Paul then hands the envelope to the professor. Perun says that if he keeps this up, he won't get another chance to disguise himself. Paul is visibly scared. Perun takes the letter and confirms it was Henzi who sent it. The professor comments that Henzi schemed to deliver the thesis right under the Declan's noses. He thinks for a bit and concludes that the cunning fox wouldn't be caught so easily. So Professor Perrin wonders what trick Henzi is pulling. Suddenly, a large explosion happens in the room. At that moment, someone approaches, saying it's a pleasure to meet him. And this man introduces himself as Callahan, doubting the professor knows him. Paul is shocked. Callahan calls him a mercenary. Perun then gets annoyed at being called that, and he tells Callahan to get straight to the point without beating around the bush. Perun gets angry and says the stench of Callahan's vermin is rotten. The redhead then gives a dry laugh. He says he's never been treated like this and that this is fun. Then Callahan points at Paul and orders him to be taken out. He then says he'll see to it and invokes his ability. He threatens to leave him with only one eye and one arm. At that moment, one of them puts the thesis away. Then Perrin takes the lead and summons his magic circle. The two attacks collide, causing a massive explosion. Paul, in the middle of the clash, is unable to do anything, but he manages to stay on his feet. Perrin used his power and protected Paul from the attack. The professor gets his student's attention. He warns that from now on he won't see him as a student, but as a mercenary. Paul gets the message and draws his blade. Perrin realizes the alarms didn't go off and that the Declans cast a blackout spell. The entire academy is silenced by magic. Perrin then looks at Paul, knowing he can only count on him now. Callahan scoffs, saying the envelope came from the scum of the Blanders. Perrin then prepares for the fight and asks what he should do now. The redhead smiles maniacally and accepts the invitation to battle. Callahan unleashes his mana and a huge wave of energy. Perrin watches him release his energy. Then Callahan launches an attack, making Perrin dodge. Callahan attacks Perrin with a wicked smile. Paul is on high alert, seeing the intensity of the fight. The professor then attacks with an ice spell. The clash of their attacks causes a huge explosion. Our guy, from a distance, watches the explosion of magic in the sky. Aster realizes things are getting serious. Our guy then prepares to jump into action and grabs his mask. He puts on the mask and says it's been a while since he last wore it. Now he's no longer Aster, but problem solver number 1. Next, our guy makes a gesture with his hands while saying, Moon. Then our protagonist asks for permission to be a vigilante for today, one more time. but he admits, to be honest, he was never really a righteous guy. With that, Aster leaps and dashes toward the chaos. Meanwhile, the academy is in ruins. Callan laughs manically and praises him for withstanding his attacks. Amidst the fire, Paul is panting. Paul is frustrated with the situation. He realizes the talisman he received was actually a protective artifact and feels lucky. Perrin tells Paul to get out of his way. He then continues to launch powerful magic attacks against Callahan. The attacks meet, causing a powerful impact. Perrin comments that he's not so bad. Paul is startled to see his sword covered in ether and asks if it's a spell. Perrin asks if he can keep blocking the incoming attacks. Paul says he'll hold on for as long as it takes, because if he can't, he's a goner. Callahan smiles and says a mage and a guard are a good combination. Then a giant pillar of ice forms. And on the other side, Callahan sends a great wave of fire. Paul cuts through the enemy attack with his sword. With that, Perrin creates a shield to defend himself and says the guard has been defeated. He realizes that if this continues, they'll be stuck in an endless cycle. In that case, Perrin prepares to use his trump card. Callahan also prepares to use his most powerful ability. Perrin explains that when mana is limited, a struggle for control begins. He then uses a powerful spell and wonders how much Callahan can take. Callahan understands they're going to have a power struggle. With a smile on his face, Callahan accepts the challenge. Then the two unleash all their power against each other. A large sphere of energy forms. The impact of the explosion is powerful. Paul realizes the situation is complicated. He gets frustrated with the situation he's in. He thinks they are both monsters, and there's no opening to attack. Then Paul falls, defeated, and says they should have fought alone from the start. Suddenly, huge tornado forms. One of the mercenaries tells everyone to fall back, as advancing now would be suicide. He then asks how many problem solvers are still standing. At that moment, clouds of smoke appear. One of them gets scared, realizing it's an ambush. While Callahan and Perrin continue to face off, our guy appears on the battlefield. Callahan and Perrin are surprised to see our hero's arrival. With his eyes glowing, our protagonist tells them to watch what's about to happen. Aster is proud of his grand entrance in the middle of the battlefield. They stare at the protagonist. Callahan yells indignantly, asking if they're kidding him. Then our protagonist rushes forward quickly. With a swift move, our guy surprises Callahan, grabbing him by the neck. Our hero says that this place will be his grave. Callahan becomes enraged and yells for our protagonist to drop dead. Next, the mage tries to counter-attack with a fire spell. Callahan's attack explodes. With that, the mage manages to steady himself on the ground. He realizes he's suffering from mana backlash. Our protagonist doesn't fall and leaps toward Callahan again. Callahan feels he can no longer fight properly after coughing up blood. Then two more problem solvers appear to provide support. The mage needs to suppress the mana backlash before continuing. He then quickly drinks a potion. Callahan wonders where on earth someone like our guy came from. He has a look of astonishment. Meanwhile, our protagonist fights bravely against the other two problem solvers. Callahan admits that our hero's movements are surprising and efficient. Then the mage is shocked as he realizes he's impressed by our guy's skills. He says he doesn't know who our protagonist is, but with a furious gaze, he yells that he will finish our protagonist. The mage launches a powerful attack. He launches a powerful fire attack that explodes with great intensity. Aster watches the attack approaching. The attack causes a massive explosion everywhere. Callahan wonders if he managed to hit our hero. He doesn't care about the other problem solvers caught in the blast. The mage realizes the protagonist must be eliminated at all costs. He feels a little excited and grabs another potion. Callahan then throws the vial to the ground. And when he goes to take another potion, the protagonist appears behind him and asks if that's all he's got. Our hero explains that the mage is cold and calculating on the inside, and with a gesture as if holding a gun, he activates his magic circle, and launches a powerful ice spell against Callahan, which comes out as a powerful beam of light. Callahan is paralyzed by the speed of the beam, and in the blink of an eye, the beam pierces through him. With his forehead pierced, Callahan falls. Then our guy walks up to him. He then admits the enemy was strong. He thinks any other mage would have been defeated by that attack, but Callahan's final spell helped him a lot. Aster approaches the body. He then starts searching for something. Our hero finds what he was looking for and picks it up. He explains that mages like Callahan carry their secrets with them. The protagonist puts the bag away, as he will analyze its spell later. Our guy looks back and says that Professor Perrin is late. Professor Perrin explains that he was late because he was freezing some rats, but he wants to know if our protagonist is also a rat. Aster sighs and asks what Perrin thinks of the fact that he defeated one of Declan's men. Perrin deduces that if one was a madman, the other was the one sent by Henzi. Our protagonist wonders if he can trust the professor based on just that. The professor then asks about the mercenary who approached him earlier, and our hero wonders if the thesis was split into two parts. He says the item the mercenary had was a fake and part of Henzi's plan. Henzi wanted to use the fake thesis as bait to lure out all the enemies. Our guy also notices that the Imperial Knights are late, and concludes that the Declan family must have some influence over them. Aster hands the real document to Professor Perrin. The professor takes the thesis to have a look. He then asks if our guy knows what's written in it. With a smile, our protagonist says he not only knows but also wrote it. Professor Perrin is surprised but understands the situation. Our hero says he doesn't mind fighting but doesn't want to lose a reliable ally. Perrin accepts the thesis for now, as he doesn't want to lose an ally either. Then our protagonist asks if he wants something in return. Perrin explains that Henzi only trusts people whose desires align with his, and that's why he will trust our guy. Our hero thinks for a moment. Then he asks for a book, and the professor is confused by the request. Our guy says he is going to build a great tower. He plans to fill the tower with books so everyone can read. Perrin agrees and thinks that writing a book could be fun. Our hero says goodbye, but Perrin asks how they will keep in touch. Our protagonist replies that he doesn't usually get men's contact info, but from his inventory, he takes out a strange purple necklace. He hands the communication necklace to the professor. The professor takes the object, and Aster warns that if one breaks, the other will break too. Professor Perrin agrees and says he doesn't like men either. He then leaves and feels a bit disgusted for some reason. Shortly after, the Imperial Knights finally arrive. They quickly secure the crime scene and help the injured and arrest those involved. The students are evacuated as a precaution against a second attack. Our hero takes the opportunity to blend in with the students. Suddenly, Damien appears and asks where our protagonist was. He thinks that with the bodies of the mage and the problem solvers, the Declan family will quiet down for a while. Our guy wonders why his item reacted that way in the last battle. He remembers that when he blocked the flame spell, the energy was repelled. Aster remembers that it's a technique mainly used by elemental mages. He is confused because he can't understand what happened. Our protagonist needs to investigate further to find out the truth. He decides to go to the largest library in the east, Lapider, which is inside the academy. At that moment, someone calls our guy and asks if he is Aster. Then a young man introduces himself as Chenbi and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Chenbi smiles and comments that our hero is a good fighter. Our protagonist wonders if he was seen fighting and if he needs to get rid of him.